Have you ever noticed that some quilts are quite simple to piece together while others require a little bit more thinking? Today I'm going to show you some of my quilts and show you what I mean by that. In particular, we are working on this quilt and we'll be sewing this later in the video. And I'll show you how I've been piecing this quilt together because it does require a little bit of thinking with my colour selections. So this is a quilt called the 9-patch Scrappy Stars that I am making for my niece. She is 4 and she loves the rainbow, so that's why we've got the colours of the rainbow in the stars. Thank you very much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure. My name is Rachel and I make videos here on this channel that hopefully inspire you to make your first quilt or your very next quilt. So here are my simple to piece quilts that I want to show you. This first one is I made for my daughter, okay, and it is just one block repeated over and over again, and it's this block that has a quarter circle in it. So I just made this block up myself by drawing it on cardboard and then adding my seam allowances, and I really wanted to practice curves is why I made this quilt. And I made this one during COVID lockdown. I put together all these blocks. Once you've made many of these blocks, it's simply sewing them all together. So you can sew this together with the web method, and I have a video showing you how to do the web method, which I will link in the description below. And then another quilt that's similar in its construction because of that one block is this one. So the block itself is trickier because it is a flying geese. Have you ever made a flying geese before? They're my favorite block. I love them. And when you make the flying geese, you end up with 4 triangles. So once you pop the 4 triangles together for this design, you end up with your block being a long rectangle. Once you have that, it is one block repeated. Once you've got the layout, you can just stitch it all together. Again, in the web method if you like, or just individually, you can chain piece. So there is a full playlist on this quilt of how I constructed that from start to finish. So I'll link that one below. That one's for my son. Did I say that? Because he goes for Collingwood, which is his football team that are black and white. This quilt, though, was trickier to piece together. So I wanted to discuss this one. Again, there's a playlist of this quilt. I made this one last year on the channel. It was tricky for a few reasons. Okay, the first reason is that the blocks are different sizes. So we have large navy squares and then we have tiny little scrappy square in square blocks. So for this quilt, it did involve me, I actually pieced it as I went, if that makes sense. And it is also tricky because it's on the diagonal, on point, rather than square, and it also is color washed. It goes from a warm tones down into neutrals, down into cools. So this one did take a little more thinking, and I actually pieced seams and left them unfinished. So this is like top range tricky to piece, whereas those ones are the easy ones to piece. There is a playlist on this video, on this quilt, so you can go and check out how I made that one and see what I mean. So let's get stitching on this one. I'll show you how the steps I've been going through to piece it. The tricky part about this quilt, I mean, it is squares, so you might be thinking, but Rachel, what are you talking about? That one's just squares too. What's tricky about this is I have Scrappy star points that are in the same color as my Scrappy 9-patch, and I don't want to have any of the star points fabric and going against a 9-patch fabric that is the same. I want to make sure it's completely Scrappy and not having any repeated fabrics next to each other. So that's the tricky part of it. So I have been piecing it bit by bit. This is an intermediate, so I'd say that's hard, and the first ones were the easy ones to piece. So let's get stitching, everybody. This quilt has been part of a quilt-along on this channel. If you are making this quilt, I'd really love to hear how you're going with it. So please make a comment below and let me know where you're up to, what colors you're using, and any advice that you need, and we can all pitch in and try and help you. So as you can see, we've got the red, orange, yellow, green, and we're up to blue. The star points of the green are not finished. As you can see, I've laid them out here because I can't piece these ones together until I start with the blue. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to lay out the blue blocks. So my green points are already stitched in. I did this in the last set. So now I'm going to put out my blue 9 patch. They sit directly under my snowballs. The next step is to put my large background squares. So I've got heaps cut here, and I am at this stage just placing them down. Need to move it all up a little bit. I thought I had enough room. So I just am, I guess, just laying them down fairly randomly, and then I can make changes. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I'm happy with the layout of those background blocks. I have a good variation there in the different patterns. Okay, now I have my squares. So if you missed me making the snowball patch, you should watch the previous video where I show you how to do that, because you don't actually cut triangles. It's made out of squares, and that's what makes it a great block for beginners, because you don't sew triangles, and triangles are a little bit more tricky than squares. So at this stage, I'm popping down the colors as randomly as I can, and definitely not having, so I've got this color, I wouldn't put it there or there, it'd be too close, but maybe down here would be fine. So I'm just placing the squares where I'd like my points to be. These will be turned into triangles. I think I'm done. I think I'm happy with that as well, and the placement of those squares. So now we go ahead and make the snowballs. So an extremely fast tutorial on the snowball block is that you pop your squares right sides together on the very edges of your block. You draw a line with an erasable pen from corner to corner. You go to your machine, you make sure they're definitely in place on the corner, you sew along that stitch line, then you trim off the fabric, and when you fold it back, you get the snowball block. So I need to do a lot of those, and this is the part that would take the longest time in piecing these together, is turning all of those squares, little squares, into triangles. So I'll go ahead and do that now, but for me that will take me maybe up to an hour to do. These corners that I cut off, I've been keeping these. And look what I've done. Oh, I'll have to go get it. So the little corners I've been cutting off, I've been sewing them along their long edge. At this stage, they're all just joined together still. They're the yellow batch. I thought that I would obviously trim them, open them up, iron them, little tiny half square triangles. So cute. I could pop together into a cushion to go alongside the quilt, and it would have all the colours of the rainbow in the cushion. So that's my plan, but that at the moment is just looking like this. But don't worry, I'm not going to throw those triangles out.
I always get so many questions about what my machine is, and I always forget to say it's a Janome Memory Craft 6600.
I forgot that I've got to wear my new glasses so I can actually see better. What do you think? Do you like them? It's my first set of glasses, and I've been using them when I'm reading, but when I'm stitching at my machine, I forget to use them just out of habit. But when I put them on, I'm like, oh, I can see the line that I've drawn a little bit more clearly. So thought I'd show you those because I mentioned them in a previous video that I was going to get them. So I've been happy with them. So all the squares have been sewn onto our large squares and trimmed. Okay, the next step is to iron all of these flat and open. So I do all the stitching first and I do all the ironing next. So I do the same jobs in batches, okay, rather than sew, iron. I've done all the sewing and now I'm going to do all the ironing. So I'm going to try my magic trick to get these ironed. So here we go. Oh, that didn't work. Let me try again. It worked. Lovely and flat. I used a hot steam iron to iron those corners down. Okay, so now we're in a position, where we have squares that can be sewn together. We can sew this row together and this row together. Okay, and then sew the two rows together and sew it onto the bottom of our quilt that we've already made. Now this third row here though, we cannot sew this row together yet because we need to put the star points of our next row of stars, which after blue we're going to go with indigo. Before I sew this row together, just a little message for the people that are doing the quilt-along with this pattern. When we were making the 9 patch, I did a 1/4 inch seam. They're slightly smaller than the large squares that we cut. Okay, so if you are still making your 9 patch, I'll do a scant 1/4 inch seam. So that means a tiny bit less than a 1/4 inch. That will make your 9 patch the same size as these patches. But in the meantime, that's okay if you've already sewn them, as I have, and they're slightly smaller than our cut squares. I'm going to show you how to fix that and you won't even notice. So you can see, hopefully, that this 9 patch, when sitting right sides together against our block that we're going to stitch down this line, is smaller. You can see a little bit of the other block poking on each side. Okay, so I just line up this 9 patch in the center so that the same amount is on each side, the other block. Okay, and then so as usual, you will still catch enough with 1/4 inch seam, you'll catch enough of the 9 patch. So the 1/4 inch foot, the metal part on it, I'm going to line up with the larger of the blocks. So it's still a 1/4 inch seam, but there is less of the 9 patch as part of it. And when you're lining up all the other blocks, they will match up because I've trialed it and it's all good. So that is how you fix that little problem. If your 9 patch are slightly smaller than the patches that you cut. Look, another thing you could do is then trim all these smaller, but I didn't want to do that because I'd already cut them all and I knew that that would do the job. So that was the block 1 and block 2 of the row. So now we're going to this one, right sides together. And again, just looking from this side, just having that 9 patch sitting a little bit away from the edge. 1/4 inch seam based on the edge of the larger block. And the next one, right sides together. Ever so slightly away from the edge. So this only occurs when you're sewing the 9 patch. If you're sewing just the Snowball to the plain blocks, that they match up, they're fine. I have my 2 rows now all stitched together. I need to iron these, that's the next step, and I iron the seams away from the Snowball block. So this block, this block, this block, this block, the seams will be ironed away. That means they're opposites, and so when I sew the rows together, the seams will what we call nest. Okay, the seams will be going in opposite directions, which will help it all just to lie a little flatter. Okay, so I will sew those 2 rows together, and then I'll sew it to the other part of the quilt, and I'll be one more color down. But as we talked about, those blue, we have to wait until we do the indigo before we do that row. So now, next video, you will see a finished quilt top. So make sure that you are subscribed and you turn your notifications on so that you'll know when I post and you'll be able to see that quilt top. I am a bit excited about next video as well because it's a long-awaited return of my mum. She has been over in France on holidays and now she is back. She has started hand quilting her magnificent color wash Scrappy square and square quilt that we worked on last year together. I'm going to go over to her house and check her progress and take you through what she's been doing. So I think it will be a lot of fun and I hope to see you then. So I'm going to say goodbye now, but if you'd like to just stay and you can watch me finish what I'm working on today. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to read all your comments. See ya.